Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the dinner. I think that was actually pretty good. There's a little bit of dessert left. You come get some more. You just have to leave one because I haven't had mine yet. So, and it looked like it's pretty good. So, I'd like to again thank everybody for coming. One thing I'd like to do is say a special thanks to the State Road Event Center, the Shiloh here for helping us here and having us here. I think they've done a good job, so I appreciate that. And also there's a lady named Marla, that does our centerpieces and our decorations. I think she's done a great job, and she's out of Blackwood, and it's the Wedding and Party Exchange. So if anybody needs anything, she's just a real small business and stuff. There's a little card on the table, but I think she's done a great job doing this, and she's not here right now, but maybe she'll help hear a little bit of a clap, so we get her clap back there. A couple other things, I want to thank, the John Burke Society, and we have another sponsor, Lighthouse Electrical, right? That they don't bring anything, so I'd like to have you stand up, Shirley. and have them stand up and say thank you very much, for all of the support. They really do that. and as you can see, we're friends here, and we're here for a great reason, and that reason is to be able to do what we can to affect change in what's happening, in our state and our country and all this right now. And a big thing with that is this paper that's on your table. A few of you filled them out, but what this is we're in the situation we are because of the people that we have elected into positions of power. I really hesitate to call them leaders, okay, because there really are not. But we've enabled them to get positions of power, and they're there to represent us. And that's the key about our Constitution and what's, about our country, is we the people have the representatives. And a lot of them have failed us. And I'll just be blunt about that. We need to work on trying to replace them. I would say not only just at the federal level, the state level, but local levels. We hear a lot of complaints or a lot of grumblings about the city this, the county that, the school board this, the school board that, and all of that. We can change that. But what we need to have is good candidates, good people that are willing to step up and have the values and the integrity to do what's necessary and to do what's right. And they leave that. And that's what this form is all about. So if you're interested in doing something like that, please fill out that form. You can either set it on the table, hand it to me or whatever, or even mail it in if you want. But I really encourage you, we need to find people that will step up and help us. We can sit on the sidelines all day long and complain, but until you get out in the field and really, as in a football sense, you can't move the ball down the field from the sidelines. So you have to do something. So I'd ask us all to do that. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker. She is a representative, and in my opinion, this is Doug Toomer, because as they say, as Stan Frido can't endorse or oppose anybody necessarily, but Doug Toomer, he sort of likes Dorothy Moon. She is one of our representatives, and if we could give her a grand clap, I think her, and actually even Carrie Hanks is here too. And I'd like to have you both stand up, if you could. And Doug Toomer's opinion, these two are an example of good representatives. The unfortunate thing is Dorothy has decided she doesn't want to be a representative anymore. But she wants to still serve us and do a great job. And I'm sure that she would. She wants to be Secretary of State. Okay? I'm going to let her come up and tell us, what does Secretary of State mean? What does that do? What are the responsibilities? Why does she think she is qualified? What does she think she can do for us? And all of that. And as I said, in all of our meetings like this, let's listen to her, and then she'll give us a chance to ask her some questions. Ask her the hard questions. Okay?
That wasn't the deal.
Yeah, it's the deal, because you know what? I know that she won't shy away from them at all. And with that, Dorothy, please come up. Everybody, please give her a great hand. Thank you.
That was so nice, Doug, and thank you for the lovely meal. That was great. Good evening, everybody. Last time I was here, I was talking to you on my Rampage tour, and I talked about a lot of issues that a lot of you were concerned about, and I've been concerned about, the direction that our state and our country have been going. Well, since that time, that was last September, just a couple of months ago, and during that time, I got to meet a lot of folks, and this great group and how people are getting involved, it's inspiring for me to continue and to go and seek for a higher office. I was contemplating running for Secretary of State back in April. Somebody else, a good conservative, was going to run. They took 3 months to consider it. We had a medical issue in the family with my son's eye, and so that just kind of put things off. But what happened is when I was driving home from a Young Americans for Liberty meeting on October 30th, I heard on the radio as soon as I came into Stanley, Idaho, that Phil McGrain with the Ada County Clerk was going to mask up the volunteers and the election workers. No health district put out any mandate. No Secretary of State said at these elections people have to be masked. He unilaterally did that. So I'm going, you have got to be kidding me. And if you've heard me talk, I just can't believe some of the stuff that happens in this state. So I got home and I talked to my husband. I said, Dar, I've got to run. And I've been conflicted pretty much for the prior 3 months. Lost a lot of sleep over it because I do live in a beautiful place. I've got a great life off grid east of Stanley. It's what most people want to do and where they want to live later in life, with nobody bugging them. And that's kind of where we're at. But when you see what's happening, and I have sons, and I look at everybody's kids, and I see that people are concerned about what's happening, especially with election integrity, because when I went around on my Rampage tour, that's how it all started. Because I came out and said, how come we didn't join the Trump lawsuit, the Texas lawsuit, when he lost his election? And that's why I was rampaging, because it made me mad. Because our governor said, I am going to write an amicus brief and all this. He never had any intention, but Janice McGeehan did, and 40 of us signed on. So I've already talked about that. But that was talking to 40 different groups, over 4,000 people. Even before I came in here in September, I'd already talked about 4,000 people around the state. And the biggest issue was election integrity. And Representative Hanks here, she can verify that we got more emails, more letters, more phone calls on the fact if our votes don't matter, if there's any doubt whatsoever, we will lose our republic. And I believe that more than anything at all. And we're already seeing everything else happen, but to me, in my mind, after talking to folks at these gatherings, I knew that the election integrity issue was number one. Not Common Core anymore, not Obamacare when I first ran. This is the number one issue. So, there's 3 other people that are running. And a lot of people said I couldn't vote for any of them. I couldn't either. That's really where I was at. They're all, I'm the conservative choice, I'll put it that way. I am the very conservative choice in the entire lineup. So I announced on November 2nd, after I went home and told my husband I was going to run, but first I had to find a treasurer. I've got a great treasurer who's working for me. And immediately on election day, I went and talked to Steph Lucas. I got on her radio show, I got on KLIX in Twin, and then I got on KBOI in Boise. And I decided to use the radio to get my word out, and I knew it would spread pretty fast and pretty far within a day. And it did. So then the next day I did a press release, paper press release, because I knew the press wouldn't be very fair. I don't know why I would think that, but anyway, I wouldn't think they'd be fair. And, but they did, actually, the Capital Sun, an AP writer did put out a pretty good article. Actually, it was a fair article. And he stated how much money the other candidates had already raised, which was fortunate, because if you try to get on the Secretary of State's website tonight and you want to find out what Dorothy Moon has already raised, good luck. You won't find it. That website is so hard to navigate, despite the fact that they got $2 million 3 years ago, and I did vote for that appropriation, to update the website. They ruined the website. Brian Smith and I were talking about it. He goes, Dorothy, I can't figure out. I mean, I don't know if we have to get a bunch of 7-year-olds to find out what everybody's raised. But I'm serious. No one can. How many of you have been on the website?
Yeah.
Can you find anything?
Nothing.
I was going to say I'd hire you if you did. But no, you can't. It's been ruined. So anyway, the website's a mess. So there's a lot of issues that I have found out about elections. And some people say, well, the one guy is an Ada County clerk, the other guy is the deputy to the Secretary of State currently, and the other one is a state senator who's running for this seat. Well, I kind of am distanced from all of them because the Ada County clerk, we've already had some troubles with the election there. So one, he masked up volunteers, and he masked up election workers 3 days before an election. So 3 days before an election, the volunteers who are helping out people like me or Carrie Hanks to watch and see what's going on, which we should be doing if we want to guarantee some fair elections in our counties. We want as many eyes on them, and the ballots popping back and forth at the machine if there's something wrong with it. You've got to have people there. So anyway, the poll workers, the election workers, after I went on the radio on the 3rd, I put out also a Facebook post, and I don't know if some of you saw it, but I was sitting there and I said, I'm Dorothy Moon and I'm running for Secretary of State. Election integrity is a huge issue in this state. Everybody's concerned about it, and we cannot have no doubt in our elections. And after I put it, and then I also continued on saying that I want to know if any citizens of Idaho have seen any discrepancies, any glitches. Please email me, call me, or reach out to me and tell me your story. Holy smokes. And people say there's no issues in Idaho. I'm going to prove them wrong. I just interviewed somebody. I was up in Nampa Monday and Tuesday of this week. I just interviewed a gentleman who ran for Meridian City Council. And he ran for it, and he had 3 precincts, and he had been ahead all through the day. And then all of a sudden, the absentee ballots come in, and he lost by 56 votes. And that happens. It happens. But then he got a phone call from the clerk, and the clerk said, you know, I hate to tell you this, but your ballots that went out for absentee were not randomized. So randomized ballots mean that if there's, let's say there's 3 people running, one person is in first position, 2 is second on the ballot, and the 3rd person is down here. Then they switch. And then maybe the 3rd guy's on top, the 2nd guy's still, you know, whatever. It's randomized. And they found out statistically that if someone goes in and votes, and they see some names, and they think, you know, I really don't know any of these guys, but, you know, I'm going to pick number 1 just to vote. There is an advantage to having your name on the top. I didn't know all this, but I sure found out about it. Anyway, so randomization is a huge issue. So what did the clerk do? The clerk sent a letter to the Secretary of State and to our Attorney General. And knowing how our Attorney General likes to give opinions, he didn't want to give one this time. And he sent it back to the clerk. The Secretary of State sent it back to the clerk and said to the clerk, you figure it out. Now wait a minute, I'm sitting here thinking, this is a guy that just unilaterally masked up a bunch of volunteers and election workers. You mean he couldn't make the decision, I'm going to send out the 2,000 absentee ballots, and I don't know if I said 1,600 or 2,000, but only 1,600 came back. I'm going to send out 2,000 absentee ballots to all of those people who requested the absentee ballot and redo the vote and randomize the ballots. That's what I would have said if I was clerk. But that isn't what happened. He said to this person, Michael Hahn, if you want to sue me, you can sue me. So we're looking at $6,000. This guy, you know, people aren't gonna put that kind of money into it because you don't know what's gonna happen. So anyway, I interviewed him. He came over to the place I was staying at 2 days ago and we shot a video. It will go on my website and I'll put it out on social media. I've already had other people come and talk to me that there might be some issues that we need to address. I will put it in a video and put it on the website so people do know there's issues in this state. And there are some. And they may not be as grotesque as we saw in the presidential election, but they're still there and they're causing doubt. My problem with the situation for this Michael Hahn is there is no remedy. If we're going to have a level playing field, and it should be, Democrats, Republican, Independents, Constitutional Party, you guys, it's all got to be fair for all of them. Now, if we're not going to challenge something like just randomizing the names, then that's bad. 56 votes aren't a lot. And that kind of brings into another question. So there were 2,000 absentee ballots that went out, but only 1,600 came back. I don't know, it gave me pause. Maybe I should expect absentee ballots that were requested by voters that you wouldn't have a higher number of them come back. I don't know. I've been a legislator. I'm gonna have to start crunching a lot more numbers. But that also gave me pause. How come 400 people didn't turn their ballots in? So that's just one county. Another issue, and now I'm not naming I'm not going to name counties, but there was another county in this state, southeast part, and that's about as far as I'm going to go. I've got to work with these people if I get elected. Okay, so the southeast part, and everything was totaled. The winners were announced. You might have heard about it because it's kind of newsy down here. The winners were announced. Then all of a sudden, oh gosh darn it, we forgot to add in the absentee ballots. So they announced all the winners. The next day they had to turn 2 of them. So there were all these people thought they won. The next morning they said, oops, human error, we made a mistake. So that was bad. You know, you hear the high of highs, you run for city council and you win, and then you find out you don't. So and I've got the newspaper article. So this is all verifiable. So that was bad. You should figure the absentee ballots probably should have been brought in first. So I think what the problem is this state does not have uniformity across the entire state. And when you read the election law of this state, it says the Secretary of State's job is to guarantee uniformity across the state in our elections. I'm not seeing it. Paper ballots, I'm all for them. I am sick of this electronic stuff. Yes. And you know, I always think back to the time in Broward County, the hanging chads. I mean, that went on for like 6 months anyway, these hanging chads. And you remember all the people in the room, and they were counting, looking, holding up, looking for the chad. I don't care how many people we've got to put in here, we can count those ballots. The other thing is the accuracy. So I don't know if you remember, but when Mike Lindell had his symposium talking about our elections, and I want you all to know that none of the legislators were told we were invited to go to that. I would have gone had I known. But no, none of us knew. So it stopped somewhere up at the Capitol. I don't know where, I'm not going to say. But anyway, we did get an invite. I didn't get an invite. Carrie didn't get an invite. No one I know, got an invite. In fact, it was funny because they said all states were represented, but I don't know who from Idaho went. So the Mike Lindell, he made accusations that there was some fraud in the state. If for you people who've tracked this, you know this. And so then all of a sudden our Secretary of State's office, we're going to go audit some counties. And we're going to pick out Camas and Butte. The 2 smallest counties in the state. I'm not making this up. This is true. Look it up. Okay, so the 2 smallest counties in the state, we're going to audit them. Now, wouldn't you feel a lot more comfortable if it was an independent audit, somebody totally unrelated to the Secretary of State's office or a clerk's office? I would. I would, but it wasn't. So a person from the Secretary of State's office went and conducted these audits. Now, what if there are 1 or 2 votes different in Butte? So you have 99.817 accuracy or something like that. I am telling you right now, there is no reason in the world why we do not have 100% accuracy in the tabulation of these ballots. And to me, that is what we need to strive for. When you go to the bank and put $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 in there, you're not waiting for them to say, we're okay with 99.817% accuracy when we get our money back. Same with a ballot. You have so many of them. You have the ones that were destroyed or trashed or eaten by a machine, got something happened to it, or somebody spilled their coffee on it, whatever. You have the destroyed ballots, you have the ballots that were cast, and you have the ones that were not cast. You have a certain number of them. And they better add up to 100%. And if not, start over. Count them again.
Get somebody else in there to count.
Or get somebody else who can count and not a Common Core math student over the top. And it's a problem. It's a problem. I actually did. I'm staying at. How many of you know Sonia Harris? Okay, I'm staying at her place tonight. Getting there late, but anyway, I'm staying there. So I stopped and got her some flowers. They're out in the car, and it's been cool. I've been driving around with the air conditioning on. It's been cool. But anyway, so Sonia here, I got her some flowers. I got them in Rupert, because that's where I was passing through. And it was 25, so it was 26.70 someone. And the gal goes, oh, I'm just nervous. I don't know how to make change. I said, so it's $3.30 or whatever. And she goes, oh. But no, people don't know math. That is true. And this was a girl who was about 20 years old. So it is frightening. It's very frightening. But anyway, as far as the count go, it has to be 100%. That's what we have to strive for. Because what's going to happen is when 99.8% is okay, or 99.1% is okay, and then in 10 years, okay, 95%, we're cool with that. No, we're not. No, we're not. These are elections. So I was looking in Donnelly, Idaho. There was one race where it was 1 vote apart. Now you're telling me at a 99.8, an acceptable number, that 1% doesn't mean anything. Now what happens when you take that number and you extrapolate it up to an Ada County, Kootenai County, Idaho Falls? Those are bigger numbers. So if you remember, Senator Fred Martin, he won by 6 votes. 6 votes. With this margin of error, though, So no, we can't have those kind of margins of error. We've got to definitely make sure that it's accurate. So that's kind of some of the things. Now, there are more stories. I've heard now about a county where people were in line to vote and they came out and said, we're having trouble with some machines and stuff. I don't know if it was the tabulation machine. I don't know if it was the voting poll where you sign in machine, but for some reason they couldn't open the door yet. And so they were actually told to go home and come back in about an hour. So my question is, how many people actually came back? We don't know. We don't know how many people were in line. We don't know if 50% came back, maybe all of them came back. Or someone said, oh, heck with it. It doesn't matter anyway. It's already in the can. So, but those are just some of them. So that is what the chief election officer in this state does. One thing I will promise you though, if a sitting governor ever came up to me, if I was the Secretary of State, and they said, Secretary Moon, you need to move the election from May 19th to June 2nd. I'd be nice. Oh, just talk to the hand, because I'm not going to do it. Anyway, you need to call the legislators in and let them make the call. It is our job, and I'll tell you, we were pretty sore about it. We knew it was our call, and he did it anyway, and it was unconstitutional what happened there. The other thing I would do too, Biden, if you remember, has already talked about federalizing the elections. Yes. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. Again, you've got to have somebody strong enough, and I'm thinking out of the 4 candidates that are running for Secretary of State, there is no way they will federalize our elections. And that's something I haven't heard any of them bring up. Because again, it depends on how much money is tied to it. You will or you will lose. Okay, take it. We lose it. We don't want it. Because we're not going to be told, like we have been on these mandatory vaccines, that's been going on because our governor has presently been taking a lot of federal money. So, we need to cut that tie. We need to do our own elections. Feds aren't going to come in and tell us what to do. And we need to make sure we have somebody who follows the rules. And there are rules. And you know what? In the back of that big old book full of the Idaho elections, in the back there's a bunch of remedies. They're called misdemeanors and felonies. These people who think they're going to vote 2 or 3 times, or they're going to harvest a bunch of ballots out of a bunch of mailboxes like we have at the end of Jordan Creek and down there on the Yankee Fork, and take all of ours because they know what day they go out. And they can go and pick up all those ballots out of those open mailboxes. Ours does have a key and lock to it, but most of them don't. So this kind of stuff goes on. This stuff goes on. Anyway, there's going to be penalties for that sort of action. Now, I do know that Senator Regina Baer, because election integrity is huge, there'll probably be a lot of bills come up. The Election Integrity Committee met, and they had 14 agenda items. They're all good. Let's tighten up the IDs. Let's just not use student IDs. In a county that I was just at last night, the student IDs were used as well as, you just have to hold up your phone and show a Verizon receipt. So see, most of those students are already voting at home absentee. Believe me, when my son was in Salt Lake, I said, no, you're voting here. I'm your legislator. I need your vote. You're not going to vote down there. So I mean, you live here. This is your permanent residence. But, and I'm sure that's how majority of the parents treat their kids when they go off to college out of state. They are going to want them to vote in the state that they reside in. So anyway, I know Senator Baer is going to bring that bill. There will be some other ones. I will be talking with Representative Priscilla Giddings. I think the only way that some of us could lose is if there's some really erratic things in our votes and in the polls. So we have to watch it. So anything that's going to be enacted, so let's say Regina Baer's bill goes through about the ID, we have to make it retroactive to January 1, 2022. So that when it comes to the primary, that is in effect. So anyway, there's already some things in the works, and that looks good. The second thing the Secretary of State does is businesses. So we have Moon and Associates, a corporation. We've had 3 corporations in our family. I've done all the work on that since 1992. And you know, everybody has to do the filings. You have to bring in your directors and do those filings every year. You get your notaries, your wills, trust, all those kinds of things are filed with the Secretary of State. And it's pretty cut and dry. That's probably the most boring part of the whole job. Okay, but it's important. It's important. Okay. Then the third thing that I think is very interesting is that the Secretary of State sits on the land board. And most of you know, living in rural Idaho, I've dealt with a lot of lands issues. For the ranchers, for the loggers, for the miners. I've dealt with it a lot, especially in Lemhi and Custer County. So when you think about the land board, certain sections, of course, so within all of the maps, the topographic maps within the state, some of them are endowment sections. Some sections have been traded to where we have the forested areas so that we can cut the wood and support our schools. The idea of trying to get the best return on that forested area is kind of important. So if we were to have healthier forests, more resilient forests, actually cut out and thin out some of the low-hanging fruit and letting the other trees, the Doug fir and the lodgepole grow, and even try to harvest some post and pole, I mean, we would get more money on a return. The second thing, and I know I would only be addressing state land issues, however, state lands are also close to mining areas. There's a lot of mines. I've got a U.S. Calcium in Mackey. They've got a pharmaceutical grade calcium. I was just visiting with them for a planning and zoning conditional use permit. There's a lot of things going on in the mining world, and we're talking some really good paying jobs. So when you look at the main focus of the land board when it comes to the endowment lands is to raise money for the schools, what does that do? It reduces your burden on your property taxes if we can find money laying around in the woods. And we need to take advantage of it. So if we have a land board that is actively trying to get the best return on the wood by trying to maintain healthy forests, and if we're also working with the federal government in managing through the Good Neighbor Authority, And a lot of you might have already heard about the Good Neighbor Authority, and that is where the State Department of Lands goes in to a forest area, U.S. forest area, and they manage the sale. So they go in and cruise the area, they determine the value of the area, then they auction it off. It used to be we would get stumpage fees as a county. Custer County would get so much per stump. That was out there. If we can get the Good Neighbor Authority, when it first came out, the counties were going to be given revenue off of our state management of that resource. Since it first was initiated about 3 years ago, they've already changed it where we don't get any money. I say no to that. We will get some money, and if that means going to DC and beating on the door of the Department of Ag, we will, since they're in charge of it. We have to get money if we're managing it. If not, why are we doing it? Because our forests are much more productive financially than the ones for the feds. So anyway, I think I have a master's in resource planning, so I already deal with resources a lot. I'm dealing with the high water flow water rights that are being looked at for the Lemhi Basin. The fuels reduction programs, working with the University of Idaho, trying to site a nice big mill in the Lemhi area because there's a big wood bowl up there in the North Fork area that should be harvested and cleaned up. So I see a lot of things that needs to happen. And when you look who's on the land board, it's the governor, the AG, state controller, the superintendent of public instruction, and secretary of state. And I would have more knowledge, I believe, in those areas, and that's where I could really benefit. I think, especially in reducing property taxes. We pay too much. You guys, our taxes are too high, way too high. So that's kind of my thoughts on that as well. So those are the three functions of the Secretary of State. Really most people don't even know. You just think, secretary. They've all been male. And I'm not playing that card, believe me. I didn't mean that. I'm not playing that card. But when you go in there and look at them, okay. Anyway, so yeah, but it's funny because usually when you think of secretary, you think they're all women. The treasurer, same thing. I don't know. I guess we're better with money. I don't know. But anyhow, we are. So, but anyway, I look forward to running for Secretary of State. I've really jumped into it now. My next 2 weeks are going to be unbelievable. After I leave here, it's going to be about 6 stops. Kootenai County is where my other opposition is at, and they want a conservative up there, and so I think I'm really looking forward to getting up there, and I'm sure I'm going to get the endorsement of Kootenai County, which will be priceless. That would be great. Anyway, so I guess I have questions, but that is my story on running for Secretary of State. I won't talk about anything legislative unless you just ask me, but if you do.
I'll moderate a little bit. I'm getting pretty good at this.
Okay.
I did it for 3 hours last night.
I know. So are you going to ask me a question?
No, but I'm going to. I will. See, said that.
All right.
I actually have a couple, but I'll ask you one. The election. And how the governor just arbitrarily apparently pushed the date out. I never heard about it. And until I started in this and learning about all this, I never heard about that. Why didn't the why didn't the legislature just blow up? In reality, in my mind, why wasn't it totally public knowledge, right out in everybody's face, this is what has happened, and I was sort of surprised, after I started, and got involved in all this stuff, to hear that we were guilty. So why didn't, to put it blunt, all hell break loose so that the public knew about it?
Because everybody was looking at this shiny object of COVID over here. That's exactly why. That's exactly why. Everybody was just mortified about people dying in the streets and being hauled off in death carts, and that they weren't even thinking about. I'm serious about that. There are people who actually thought they stayed at home and thinking bodies were just being wheeled out. And that isn't the way it was, but that was because the press was not being truthful. And with this movement of the date, So it was moved 2 weeks after the absentee ballots went out. So it was April 4th, Friday. Yes, April 4th, Friday, they were to go out. If you remember, Siney died the week before. And I called, and then the rumor was out that they were going to try to move the election date. And I called the Secretary of State, and I said, I need to talk to you about the election, and we are going to mail out the absentee ballots on the 4th. He said, well, I'm down in Arizona right now, and I think we're going to push it off till August. I said, you're not pushing this off till August. There's not one legislator who wants to campaign all summer long. And I mean, we've already went through a brutal session. The last thing we want to do is drag all this out. So I said, you're taking the social distancing pretty serious. And he was in Arizona. And I said, you need to get back to the Capitol. This needs to be discussed. I mean, he really was. This is no joke. He was in Arizona. And he said, well, we'll have to see, but the governor and the AG wants to move the date. And I said, no, we have to go on as normal. We have to. So anyway, that's kind of how it all went. And then a bunch of the legislators started calling in. We did browbeat Bedke, our speaker, and we said, you better not change the election. And he did go and stand for the legislators, because we were mad about even contemplating moving it. So yes, but because COVID was over here, and everybody and all the fear mongering going on with it, the restaurants, and now we had the essential, non-essential, people were focused on just trying to pay their bills and what their kids are going to do, you know, summer school or no school, or what was going to happen. Okay. And does anybody else have a question? Yes, sir.
I have a really oddball question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Ma'am, can I take your question? No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I've never been given an oddball. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Last year, I hadn't been involved in voting for many years. And when I went to register last year, it took me 3 months to go through a process. And part of the process, the reason is because under the statute, I don't remember the statute and section right now, but the provision says that in order to register, you have to provide one of 3 kinds of identification. One is either a driver's license, one is a Idaho identification card, or one is a social security number. Now tell me why in the Sam hell somebody can use a number that doesn't contain a picture to identify themselves in the state of Idaho. Now, mine's an odd question to that because I don't have a driver's license. I didn't want a state identification card, okay? So I went through this process over a 3-month period, patiently communicating with the Secretary of State's office on this very question. And the reason is that I didn't want to do that is because a social security number is a commercial identification number. And it's in violation of the 24th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which says that they cannot levy a poll tax against a person to exercise their right to vote. Does everybody catch that? Mm-hmm. If they're requiring this ID that connects to a commercial activity, which is finance, that's a poll tax. And if your driver's license connects to that, and if your Idaho State identification number connects to that, it means all 3 of those constitute some form of poll tax. So I tried to get the Secretary, but he can't go outside of the statute, and I get that. But what I was doing was, plus the other issue that comes out of that, is all 3 forms of those connect to U.S. citizenship, but I'm an Idaho citizen. I should be able to vote based on my Idaho citizenship under the Idaho Constitution. There's nothing in the Idaho Constitution that says I have to be a U.S. citizen. It says I have to be a state citizen. But there's a difference between the 2. So anyway, I communicated with the Secretary of State's office on this issue, and we came to a reasonable resolution. In fact, I'm thinking about suing to get my $10 back.
I would.
I'm dead serious because there's a principle here involved, and that's violating the federal Constitution. They violated the federal Constitution on this. $10. I mean, I've spent many hours researching and studying this issue, but the point is, why doesn't the statute provide for, and if you became secretary, I would ask you to consider it, but change it, and the same for you, Carrie, is that to propose an amendment or a change to the statute that allows some kind of common law identification, whether it's two witnesses that would come into the county clerk's office that would verify that, yes, this guy is an Idaho citizen, or that they would allow for an affidavit in the place of one of those three forms, because all three forms of those requires a social security number. That seems really strange to me. And the social security number can stand by itself to identify a person. So I don't know if that's really a question. That's an angst I have. And I am considering filing a lawsuit with the district court to recover my money and to get a judgment that that's an unconstitutional statute. I believe it's an unconstitutional statute. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, my thought on it is, one, we're bringing in about 400 Afghanis into Twin Falls right now as we speak. So when we start bringing in folks who aren't going to have any ID, well, they're going to have a lot of money. But anyway, as far as their ID and where they're going to be working and all of that, and I think the biggest issue with the ID of having a driver's license, or the ID with, if you don't drive, a state ID, is something that people really want to see because of the illegal immigrants that are in this state. I'm just saying that is why Regina Bear is going to bring this bill, is because to see it tightened up, because right now I've just heard of a lot of illegal aliens that were given ballots. That's one of the complaints I've had.
And I absolutely support that. But I have a passport. I can come to the voting place and bring a passport, but I can't register with it. Excuse me?
Mm-hmm.
And
the passport should be.
And my passport does not have the social security number attached to it. By the way, you can get a passport without a social security number, regardless of what it says on the application.
Then I think the passport should be added as a form of ID.
I would think so, but I think an affidavit should serve that same purpose. An affidavit which is signed by the Secretary of State, or a notary public.
Well, that's something to look at. That's something to look at, but I do know that they want the ease of seeing a picture on something right away.
And I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I'm really bringing it up because I want to put it in somebody's ear, okay? Because it didn't go very far with the Secretary of State, so I'm just asking you. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. But no, I want to look into that, because I do think that the passport, because it's a lot more difficult to get a passport, and now that they're pushing the STAR card, which I'm totally against, because if I'm going to fly, I'll keep my passport. Yeah, and if you got a STAR card, that's okay. I don't care if you got a STAR card. But anyway, but I'm just saying, I'm like you. I want least intrusion and not enough information going to the government. And I think that's the big problem we have in this state. The reason why we have cybersecurity issues is because we collect way too much data. Yeah. And one thing I want to bring up is that when I was on the Commerce Committee, that was my first 2 years. This is my 6th year. I'm coming into my 3rd term. Did I hold up 3 fingers, 3rd term? But when I was on the Commerce Committee, the Department of Labor was going to bring in a free, from the federal government, fingerprint machine. Now, as a teacher, bus driver, whatever we do, a lot of us have been fingerprinted, and you go to the ISP office, pay $35 because you have to do it or you don't get the job. They want to see if you've got domestic, anything, violence, or child abuse or what have you in your past. But the thing is, with this machine, in the Commerce Committee, Heather Scott was there with me, and we had a pretty good fight by holding it. We held it at the desk in committee until I could talk to the director at the time, who was in San Francisco on some sort of convention. And when he called me, he said, Dorothy, I understand there's some problems on this fingerprint machine. I said, yeah, we don't want it. I said, why do you want a fingerprint machine so you can fingerprint who? He goes, well, the Department of Labor. I said, well, who are you talking? Why? What's the problem with the Department of Labor? And they have so many employees, and their thought is that if they're dealing with income tax or to see if you have money and then you can't collect unemployment, they want to make sure that the employees are trustworthy. I said, well, how many new employees do you have? Well, none. I said, so you've had employees for how long? What's the shortest tenure of any employer that you've had? He goes, 7 years. I said, so if Now all of a sudden you don't trust the employee you've had for 7 years? You've never had an incident, why do we need the fingerprint machine? Well, the Army Corps volunteers. Army Corps volunteers, so now we're gonna fingerprint volunteers. I said, Ken, don't get the machine or we will fight this bill. And you know what? I said, you already have the machine, don't you? He said, yeah. He sent it back. And God rest his soul, because he passed away last year. He was probably one of the good ones. So anyway, cybersecurity, security is a big issue with me, especially after a fishing game. Remember, they got breached. Everybody, oh no, they've got your ID and they have your social security number. So yeah. So we just need to quit collecting data. That's the problem. We just need to quit collecting data.
I was curious, you mentioned when they cut the trees, the stumps were not getting the money. Why?
We used to.
Why is it not coming now?
You know, and that's a good question. I know I've tried to talk to the Idaho Department of Lands, Dustin Miller, he's our director. And when this first came out about the Good Neighbor Authority, everyone was, this is great, because we have forestry experts in this state. Of course we do, with all of the trees that we have. And you know, we were all gonna start seeing some money going to these different counties that are forested. And then it's just like last year, or a year and a half ago, well, the federal government was to keep all the money. So no, we were gonna have to negotiate on that. And we have to negotiate fast, because if not, we won't do the Good Neighbor Authority, and we won't do fuels reduction. We'll still maintain these big fires, considering we don't have any snow up at my house right now. It's all melted off. You know, here at the beginning of December, this is not good. I think we're looking at another drought year. So we need to do fuels reduction.
So the federal just kind of turned the tap off? On
Yes, yes, yeah.
May I comment on the lands? My son and daughter-in-law, please don't crucify me, they work for the U.S. Forestry Department. Okay. May I give...
No, there are some good ones. There are some good ones.
Yes, they're very good, trust
Yes.
me. May I give their perspective on turning federal land to state land? They battle, they want timber cut. They work with all the timber people. They want the timber cut. They've got all these Greenpeace and everything else constantly suing them. So I'm trying to put a plug in. There are some good forestry people that want the timber cut. And I know when you turn it over to the state's going to have a lot of money to battle all these lawsuits, because there's millions of dollars.
So the problem is we have to get rid of EJA, the Equal Access to Justice Act. We have to totally repeal that. So that's why we need some good congressmen in there, because it will never happen with Mike Simpson. Never.
Because they're trying to do a good job.
Yeah, and I know
They're not
that.
allowed to.
And the lawsuits are unfair, and that is how they have manipulated the system.
That's what's happened in California and Oregon. My daughter-in-law did all the timber in California, and they couldn't cut.
Right.
They couldn't cut.
I had a question over here.
Yeah, I know, but this is a little bit of a follow-up on this, and I know it comes up a little bit. And I'll just say, you know, one of the things that Idaho has is its public lands, whether it's federal or state-owned, you know, and we all enjoy those things. And most of us here aren't gazillionaires that have access to be able to buy a bunch and all of this. And some of the concern is, you know, we use it for hunting and fishing and hiking and just recreation, and we enjoy the outdoors. One of the big fears is if the state ends up with it, and you sort of made comment, what's the best value of that land? Because if they get sold to private individuals or industry, now the common citizen doesn't have access.
Right.
And so, you know, in essence, what we're doing is the citizens are losing things that, you know, they love and they cherish. How can this, what's your thought on that? You know, because that is a major impact on, I would almost guarantee everybody in this room here likes to do one of those things that I mentioned. And if for some reason they lost that ability because a private individual or a private corporation or whatever now owns those lands and blocks access, what do we do?
Okay, first of all, the lands that they bought were private. Be very clear on that. So now this is true, it's private land. The federal lands are not being sold. They can do land exchanges, so like if there's a mining project going on and they know that there's ore here or cobalt up in Lemhi County, they will do a land exchange. And normally the Forest Service gets twice the acreage that they surrender, okay, in a land exchange. When I do believe in the free market, I don't think we would not sell off Idaho lands. And that's a big argument that's used all the time. I think what people have seen over the past few years is that we have lost access to public lands. The public land managers have been deliberately shutting down roads, shutting down trails, shutting down everything. So your access to public lands isn't because of the Texans, the rich Texans who bought up a bunch of valley in Boise County. They bought private lands. If it wasn't private lands, and I know there's a bunch of videos, and you know it's pretty much over with. It was literally the environmental group saying, well, they closed this off. If a road is a mining road, if a road is a logging road, if a road has not been maintained by the Forest Service or the BLM, the Forest Service and BLM don't have any rights to it, but the private industry that opened that road, they own the road. And so there's a lot more to it than what people know. And when that trespass was bill, a lot of people got jumped up about 3 years ago. That trespass bill was brought about because in a broad description of what happened, the federal land managers were closing off more and more access. Herd Creek over there by Clayton, they had a big standoff there. I mean, here's a bulldozer getting ready to open the road because the Forest Service threw a bunch of boulders there. They had no right to do it, but they did it. They closed the road, and they used some, archaic law, the Forest Service did, to close it, and people used to go back there and cut their wood. So the thing is that the trespass bill was built up to increase the amount of the misdemeanor fines so that a prosecutor would, on private property, if people were coming on there and trespassing, that they would be charged. Because it was worth the prosecutor's time to go after a $100+ fee instead of a $25 fee. So that's how that bill all came about. But the fact of the matter is, when I look at Lemhi, when I look at Custer, when I look at Boise County, on my drive in to Boise City, those road closures are caused by public land managers. That is and I need to see how many closures compared to private closures, but I do believe very strongly in private property rights. I will never change my opinion on that. That's the only thing we have left. And I don't think that private property should be taxed either.
You don't think of what?
I don't think private property should be taxed either. And we need to work on something. Yeah, you had a question here.
I got a question and a statement because Doug brought that up. So we came out here 12 years ago now from South Georgia. It's in the South as a whole, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, there is no more public hunting. It's done, it's over with because of, they've given the land, they bought the land, whatever, the warehouse of Georgia Pacific. You want to go hunt in the South, you're going to belong to a hunting club, pay $2,000 a year, and that's it. That's the only way you're going to get it. I don't want that to happen here. And I can tell you, we ride ATVs, and we've gone places now, and we have had trails that we rode on for years that are now closed for whatever reason. That's just a statement.
And if you were at the testimony, which we were in the Lincoln Auditorium, a lot of people came. Farm Bureau was very much in support of this trespass bill, because what you had was people probably left their private property open because they want people to enjoy it too. I mean, every time summer comes around and I'm at the Yankee Fork and people are panning or ATVing or whatever they do, and I've got a side-by-side, I'm all over the place on it as well, I love it. But the thing is, they used to keep it open until it was vandalism. And I'm telling you, even though 97% of Custer County is public, either federal or state, 3% is all we have to pay for the summertime fun people who decide to descend off of a rock face, and then we have to go pluck them off because they got stuck. And it costs a lot of money. And then they're injured. Then we got to helicopter them out, and we don't get reimbursed. So the thing is that we want, there is a lot of public lands in Custer County. They can leave the 3% alone. They don't have to go on that 3%. And a lot of people have kept them open, but because now we have such an influx of people, and they're not all Idahoans, and they come in and they abuse it. They think anything with a tree on it is public land.
I understand, but punish them, not us.
No,
That's what I'm
yeah,
getting at.
but again, it's private property.
You know, punish them. I don't care how
Yeah.
much you fine them, pay them, but don't, the
And-
ones that treat the land with respect and want to ride, I have no problem. But that's not my question is,
Okay.
that's in voting. So we have an influx of, we'll just say, people from other countries, south of the border, Afghanistan, coming in here. What would you do to make sure that those people do not vote that are not U.S. citizens? Because we know that illegal voting in the last election. So what are you going to do to stop that in Idaho?
Well, that's what's coming up with the new ID, the voter ID that this this senator's working on. There's going to be, I bet, probably a dozen election integrity bills come forward. The thing is, we've got to see which ones are going to be able to make it through the Senate, which is always the big holdup. We can pass dozens of good bills, like the mandatory vaccine. When we went in for that 3 days on the 15th through the 17th, we couldn't get anything done because the Senate stopped it. They had hours and hours of testimony, people crying, losing their jobs, vaccine injury, death, all of it. And you know what? They tabled all of them. I don't know how you could look at a citizen and hear of all this grief and heartache and then not take care of this issue. So I'm just saying, we have a problem in the legislature. Yes, if I leave, I think I can serve the entire state with my skills and knowledge and ability, and the amount of time that I've served in Boise, I see how it works. And it's not pretty. And this election is going to be bad coming up because of people, and they are getting motivated thanks to groups like this. And there's hundreds of groups like this around the state. You guys, I mean, when I said, you know, I was a Tea Partier back when they started, this is a lot bigger than the Tea Party. A lot bigger. And we have multiple names. We have younger people. They don't want their kids masked or vaxxed. They see the writing on the wall. But the thing is that we have a legislature that isn't functioning. We have a legislature that has been neutered by our governor and leadership. And it is highly, because they're not listening to anybody. The fact, when I walked out of that Capitol on the 17th, I could have just thrown up that we got nothing done. I am serious. I was sick to my stomach. And because we were supposed to be going in to take care of this mandatory vaccine. That's what everybody's been contacting us about. And no, I guess I need to go on another rampage separate from my Secretary of State talk. But it is wrong. And the fact that you're here means a lot to me and Carrie, because we've got to know people are supporting us and what we keep fighting them, you know, with everything we have to make sure we do what's right.
The only thing they want to do is censor kidding. Basic.
That's right.
It's the only reason they
They
can't.
may have just,
Becky made sure he did that.
Yep.
Somebody that's running against him. So he
they
did
made
that.
sure they censored a Top Gun pilot who's done nothing but fight for our freedom.
That's right.
That's right. That's real big, isn't it? That was big of him. Yeah, but, he needs to go.
Yeah, I know.
He needs to go. Yes, sir.
Just a comment. I used to be part of Iowa Fall Trail Machine Association. And so one of the problems as far as access to these lands is that other special interest groups will put barricades up. And if people don't take them down and access that, these land managers, if it goes a year or two and nobody reaches
They leave it.
they will close it permanently.
Mhm.
So it's up to, I mean, I don't think the ATV club is out there anymore, but find groups that advocate for your rights on that, like the snowmobilers do, like the dirt bikers do, and so that we have people out there looking for those barricades that are put up by other groups that are not legitimate, and then we have the right to take those down. But if you don't have people that are willing to look for those things and challenge them, then the land managers will let them stand. So you need to get with other people that have your same interests, work with them, be riding these trails, and when you see something like that, find out if it's legitimate. If it's not, then you take those things down.
And the adopted trail program is very important. I've talked with Sandra Miller, and she's with the recreational group, the Recreational Council. And there are groups that where you can adopt a trail, you guys clean it, you use them. The thing is, people aren't cleaning them. I mean, we've had timber sales up Jordan Creek where I live, people aren't even bidding on them. People just aren't going in the forest anymore because they put the thumb on people too often for cutting wood without a permit or what have you, you know, or yes, the bikes, like the rally in the pines. That's a real big issue in the Salmon Chalice right now. I'm dealing with that,
Well,
so.
and that's the other thing, if you don't have a group like that you can be a part of, then maybe you need to start one. Because half of the battle is getting the people that ride with you to treat the land with respect, right? Because it only takes a few people, I mean, go up to Big Springs and see what the ATVs at side by sides have done. They took what used to be a single track trail and 7 feet wide. So we bear some responsibility for respecting the land, but we also need to stand up for our rights to access to it, because most of those trails wouldn't be there. Because I know that like our group does trail maintenance. We build bridges, we go in and we cut the logs out when they fall down, and we're not the only ones who enjoy those trails. There's mountain bikers and hikers that go to right too. Yeah. So if you're not part of one of those groups, find one or start.
Yeah, we ride with the group.
Okay, any other question? Oh, yes.
So I have 2 questions. See if I get this right. So we're a small business owner who runs in the electrical field, and lately the state has consolidated all of the licenses and businesses into one giant organization.
Yes.
Could you explain to me, like, if you would support that, or like why you wouldn't support it?
Not at all. I'm
Because
support it.
it's really frustrating on our end, because we see the state's power growing, sending out inspectors, and then they're going out now and they're saying that everybody, like, what did you say, that they check licenses everywhere to every person all the time. I mean, whether you be massage person, a hair cutting person, and it's all in this one big huge department, and then go out and they can go anywhere now and find people. It just seems like a lot of expense in our tax dollars to send out these people to check all the time on every single small business. Can you tell us about why they did that and why you would not support it?
Well, let me first tell you, isn't that funny how Brad Little has come out and said he's got more regulation in the state than anybody?
Yeah.
No, he hasn't. Because what you're talking about, I just got finished talking yesterday with, my husband is a professional engineer, professional land surveyor. So he has 2 licenses he has. So they used to send out a little paper card that you would fill out. Well, they have just turned it over now. It's not even a surveyor or an engineer running it. This is not a practitioner. This is just some administrator who might have a BS in economics. And that isn't right. And so the gal who was wanting the money for the surveying license, so they do it by their birthday. So every 2 years he has to renew. We got no renewal. He went in his email, because now they're doing everything by email. He didn't get the email. I got an email, a private message, because she knows me, and she said, did Dar quit, or what's going on? Because his licenses are both lapsed. I said, how'd that happen? Anyway, and he looked for the email, could not find it. Because it was December 1 and he was licensed in October, he had to pay a $300 fine, $150 for each license to get them renewed. Because it was by one day, it was another 75, so it was 75 and 75 for each one. I thought, are you kidding me? So if it happened to him, I'm sure it happened to a bunch of them. But they should not be consolidated. So what they've done is now really reduce the efficiency of that type of profession with people who know nothing about it. I am totally against it. We've got to see what we can do to break it up. I know they're trying to put everybody, the dentistry board's really upset about it too. So they're putting everybody together over in that Chinden Center, HP Center. They're going to move everybody over there. So now they've consolidated them, and they're stripping down their offices. They're putting it down just a few people to manage all of them, but they're all unique in what they do. And you need to have a journeyman, you need to have whoever, a professional, engineer or surveyor running those entities. Because right now, you're talking to somebody who doesn't understand your language at all. And so it's a big problem. Now, we have to address it, because I've gotten a lot of complaints, and I have heard from, yes, electricians, and yes.
And then a follow-up on that, is there any way for a person to get a job without a social security number? Because like if you go in as a journeyman, you have to do an apprentice license through the state. Is there a way to get a person hired that doesn't have a social security number?
I would think not. I mean, I haven't heard of any situation where that would happen, because they want to track you with the unemployment. They want to track you, and they want to make sure they get their taxes. So yeah, I mean, because if you're making money doing what you do, they're going to want their money. So no, I haven't heard of that ever happening. I haven't. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question in regards to our voting, our election offices in Idaho. It's been very difficult for us to find out anything about various offices that are open, including commissioners for county. And what is your plan? Because it's so bad right now that we don't know ahead of time who's running for office, what positions are open, and what our options are. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not from here. I actually worked as a poll worker and a poll manager. I have never seen anything like this. There's no rules about electioneering, it seems like. There doesn't seem to be a lot of structure so that we have safe elections here. And it concerns me because that's what I walked away from.
Somebody just brought that up, the exact same thing. So what you're talking about is that you have no idea who's running for county commissioner, city council, fire commissioner, anything.
And if you call, they'll just tell you.
Go look at the website, and then it's not on the website, or you can't, again, navigate the website. Okay, now, the Secretary of State is the chief election officer, and they should be overseen to make sure that that information is out. If the clerk needs to get that information out, it should be posted in the paper, like a sample ballot. Those should be out there, but they should also, have it posted on their buildings, because now they're going to try to get away with it to go more electronic, to where you have to access their website, because that bill has come up every year. And it saves the county money or the city money, so they'd like to go ahead and do their advertisement electronically. But everybody isn't electronically savvy. So that is a problem. But that was just brought up, and it needs to be in training. Again, it's a uniformity issue. If we're not getting the information out for every single county, for every single position down to dog catcher or water board or what have you, we've done a huge disservice. But no, you are not the first one to bring that up. So this is the kind of thing I'm finding out. In Custer County, where I vote, we do have the sample ballot. They do have every week, because it's a weekly paper, a discussion for each one of the positions that are being run for. Yeah, so everybody knows who's running by the time you get to the ballot box.
I know even my first time voting here in Idaho, since I had worked in the election position of watching the poll and actually being responsible for the ballots, when I went in there to put in my vote for a primary, what I thought was shocking is that I only could do Republican or Democrat, but I had no say as far as anything else. And the other thing was that the people in the polls seemed to be doing some electioneering themselves. Mm-hmm. They just told me right off the bat, "You're a Republican, aren't you? Well, here's the ticket." Mm-hmm. And never even really looked even at the roster. Mm-hmm. And in most cases, in most states, that is illegal. Mm-hmm. You cannot do that. So I'm very concerned about our votes here, because I was told people vote by party. But is that in the best interest of the people?
Well, that's to be determined by the Republican and Democrat central committees in this state. I mean that is where this comes from. Okay, but I do agree with you. We need to find out. Oh,
it's not 5 after 9.
Yeah. Thanks. My sister's flying into the airport in about 15 minutes. She looks kind of like me. 2 years young. She'll have a coat. She'll look out of sorts because she's coming from Arizona, so her coat's probably disheveled because she never wears one. Her name's Carol. Yeah. It does look kind of fine. Okay, so anyway, we do need better informed poll workers so they can look and see if somebody comes in. This happened in Canyon County. Somebody came in and they got their ballot and they said, "Hey, I've only got a fire commissioner on here. I know I've already went and saw the clerk and I have a mayor and a city council person to vote for as well." Well, sorry, it's not on there. No, I know. Where I live, I showed them on the map where I live, and these are the 3 people. I wrote the names down of who I'm voting for. They said, no, you can only vote for fire commissioner. This is one of the reports that I received as well. So the thing is, if it was a good election worker, and said, I know where she lives, she should have the other ones, and she should have somehow gotten a different ballot. But that did not happen. So because, for expediency, they'll just let it fly. That's why the poll workers and the poll watchers need to know exactly who's running. They need to represent their precincts. And the poll workers, if, you know, voting in Idaho is, well, around the country, has always been a social event. You'd have your poll workers there, some pizza place bringing pizza. Hey, how's Bob doing, Mary? Oh, doing great. You know, people chit chat and have fun. And it'd be a long day, but it was really a fun social event. Everybody used to like to go voting. That's the only thing we have to do in Custer County. No, but you know, I mean, seriously, I mean, in our rural areas, it is a social event. And that's what we need to get back to, because then you know who your neighbors are that are voting. And then if somebody says, no, wait, this isn't right, well, Bob over here, come here, yeah, let him know I live right next to you. But, you know, it's all being informed about who is in your surrounding. And that's what we have, awareness. We have to have a lot more awareness in our voting. And it is unfortunate that, you know, you see this kind of thing, and they should not be electioneering. But I was in Blaine County last night, and they said it goes on. It's already pretty well set who's going to be carrying out most of those votes. But that's why we need a Secretary of State who's going to follow the law and not turn a blind eye when complaints are made. And a lot of complaints are made that are not addressed.
I mean,
Yes.
I actually saw that somebody wearing a Republican badge on their.
No way. Yeah, that's highly inappropriate. You should have taken a picture of it, and they would have been dismissed and never been able to be an election worker again. That's what I think. They should never be able to do it again. Yes, ma'am.
When you become Secretary of State,
I love that.
who's going to take your place?
Well, I'm telling you, it is sad because I love my constituents. I do. Oh my gosh, I've got the salt of the earth. You know, these are the original pioneers I'm representing, and they're great. I think they know. When I was in Idaho City at a Republican function there, barbecue this summer, and all of the candidates for Secretary of State were there, and I said, no matter what, whatever happens with redistricting, I will still represent you. So I guess I kind of was thinking, because if I got Blaine County, if I got this, you know, I wasn't going to be too hip on representing rural Idaho, because now it's not who I'm representing. But I do know that as Secretary of State, as far as I'm concerned, this should be a nonpartisan position. I mean, I really do. I mean, I think Democrats should be treated the same as the Republicans in all regards. And again, level playing field. But I do have somebody, a good conservative, and has already been vetted pretty well. But there's going to be 4 people running in the district as it stands right now. But as far as the redistricting goes, it's been challenged. Durst versus Denny was filed by Brian Smith, thank goodness. And the first part of redistricting an area is the least amount of county splits. So 55,000 people per district. If Twin Falls County is 75,000, okay, there's going to be a split somewhere. The thing is, with the new map, or the last map, there's a couple more splits than the Durst map has. So if the Supreme Court looks at that map, they should say, one with the least splits wins. That's what they should do, if they're not biased in their judgment. But anyway, or their ruling. But anyway, that's what we got to see. Now there's going to be an appeal to it probably. Then it'll go in for another, reconsideration. They'll say we need to fix this map. The map will be fixed. Then it'll go back to another lawsuit probably. We may not know what districts all of your legislators are in until January. Thank goodness I'm just running for a statewide race, because I don't think I could deal with that stress. Well, I could, but I mean, I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't like it. But then they're not going to like it either. So they don't even know who to go talk to or which senior citizens to go eat lunch with. So, but it's too bad we're not going to get it done.
Bonneville County, I don't know about the other counties, but we've gone to this electronic wireless verification of voters. And I saw several times when I was working with the election, during the presidential election, where people would show their license and they would scan it. Oh, you've already voted, and they hadn't. I am very uncomfortable with this wireless stuff because with all the hacking and stuff, do most of the counties in the state have that? Have they gone to this one? I don't like that Bonneville's done.
My 5 have not. I mean, my 5 haven't. In fact, 2 still hand count and 3 use machines, and they all do it differently. And that's why when somebody says, well, you don't know anything about elections, oh, yes, I do. And you know, we don't have cameras on all the safes. We need to have a camera so that we can follow that chain of custody. And it is important, very important. I mean, because if you have a bunch of sheriffs running in a county, and then all of a sudden the sheriff's deputies are carrying them from one place to another place, I'm just saying you never want to look at any impropriety. Because once there is, there's doubt. And once there's doubt, everyone's talking. Well, that's funny, there were 5 races, and how did Bob lose? Because Bob shouldn't have lost, but you know, they did have deputies carrying those ballots. I'm just saying, people, we just need to make sure we secure the thought in those, you know, that those ballots are safe.
Well, you know, the way we used to do it in Bonneville was, it was all paper, and they verified with the paper ledgers that they had. But with this new system, I'm very uncomfortable with that.
I am too, and you know, the forensic audit, there was a petition that was signed with that Arizona representative. I did sign it. I was one of 12. I think only 12 of us signed it. I think there should be a national forensic audit. I have no problem with that. I think we need to go back to square one, and we need to see what works. And I think last time I was here, I was talking about, even in education, we need to get back to textbooks. Because what happened with COVID, everything just stopped. No, can't have education because the computer doesn't work or the Wi-Fi is down or something and whatever. But if we have books, you know, this is a girl who lives off grid. Of course I like books. I like paper better. But they're tried and true. We know they work. So, you know, if we have books in the school, if we have paper ballots, if we've got to start putting ink on our thumbs, I don't care what we do, but we've got to be able to prove that we are who we are and we voted one time. And paper ballots are, and I don't know if Lieutenant Governor McGeehan talked about that last night, but she was talking about some ballots that she found that were watermarked and had another security feature to it. So that's something that, you know, and what, $2 million?
Yeah.
You know, we just blew a couple $100,000 on a bunch of ethics complaints. I mean, I don't know. Weigh it out. What's more important, elections or going after people to go after them? Yes.
To follow up on that, so last night this came up a little bit too. So it's great if you have watermark ballots that are very secure, but there's issue of machines, and you already addressed it. You said, you know, I want to go back to basics, paper accounting and stuff. And I hear that a lot. I hear it all the time. People say, oh, we have to go back to basics and do paper accounting. Does anyone actually do that, though? Because it seems like something that everyone talks about, but as far as I know, no one does. I don't know what the reasons are. Do you know of any examples of not just a county, but a wider, is there a state that is?
No, as far as the state, if they do all just hand count versus machine, a lot of them do use machine. But you got to remember there's a difference between a tabulator. So if you're tabulating, what I would recommend to the clerks, and you know, I'd have to go around to all the counties, I'll bring them all in, whatever you have to do, that we've got to bring this up to speed again to where it's level playing field. And on the tabulation machines, you could actually do some dry runs. That's why it was unfortunate in southeast Idaho, we had these people who didn't count the absentee ballots. That was highly unfortunate for those people who thought they won and now it was overturned. But on the tabulation machines, you could go, let's say you get 1,000 ballots. You get 400 that are marked no, and the other 600 marked yes. Run them through the machine. A few days before, practice them. Then get another set, practice, run them through to make sure that it's accurate. And yes, nothing tied to it. There can't be any internet. And if we've got to go and put a shield over the top of the building, making sure there's no Wi-Fi, then that's what we need to do. But then I wanted to do that when I was a teacher and all the kids were on their phones and everything. I wanted to put like this magic shield over the school and stop it because kids weren't learning anymore. They were on these things all day long. But it's the same kind of thing. We have to block or cloak that type of cyber business because that's exactly what's happening. And I do know that in our largest counties, that when you go in and sign the poll book, it is electronic. So they know already, Doug didn't come and vote. Hurry up and call Doug, tell him to get up here. Because we know he's a good Republican and he's going to vote for that county clerk. That's a problem. And that is electioneering. Yeah, so anyway, that's the kind of thing we need to avoid. And there's a lot of components to it. There's a lot of them that have been exposed. I mean, just like this, randomizing of the names. I don't know how many of you knew about it. I didn't know it was that big of an issue. It's a big issue. This guy just lost a city council seat because of it, maybe. Even though he did have a recount. And that's what's funny, to add insult to injury, not only did he lose by 56 votes because it wasn't randomized by the clerk or a staff member, then they had to charge him $300, $100 for each of the 3 precincts to do a recount. I would have thought he would have just thrown that out there and said, let me do a recount for you, because I made a boo-boo. He didn't even do that. I think that was pretty bad. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I have 2 things. So I'm a professional engineer. Okay, and I wish Carrie was still here to hear this, but there is an effort in some states to remove licensure from all levels, from your hairstylist all the way up, because I think their argument was it's undue stress on some of these smaller owned businesses. Well, I would hope that you would oppose any of those measures coming forth.
Oh, I think a licensed engineer needs to be a licensed engineer.
Yes.
I think yes. I mean, when you're talking about building a bridge, you bet. I want them to know what they're doing. But as far as a hairstylist, it gets pretty bad when a hairstylist has to have more hours for her cosmetology license. I don't know if they're still called that today, but just to get her license, they have to have like 2,400 hours or something ridiculous. Every other state in the union is like 1,200. And I don't remember what the exact numbers were, but it was pretty obscene that's what we're doing to our hairstylists. How many of us have all gone out and cut someone's hair on our deck? I'm drinking iced tea in the summertime. I cut more hair in rural areas. Most of us take on that task. I mean, I don't want to get thrown in jail because I'm cutting my husband's hair. But you know what I mean?
Right. But
we're all professional hair cutters as far as I'm concerned.
Right, but that's what I mean. Is where she said it's all
Am I
been brought
right?
under
You're right.
one umbrella.
Right.
There needs to be a distinguishing thing.
Yes.
And that's a concern of mine.
Well, and just like I want my electrician to know what they're doing, and also plumber, you bet. And they're professions. I mean, it's a professional license or position, and the public needs to make sure that they have someone who's qualified to do the work.
Right.
Right.
Well, when you're talking about salons and beauticians, they're dealing with chemicals that they really do need to be monitored.
I know, but I still kind of hate it. I mean, I remember the time we had my sister, we used to do apple pectin perms on each other's hair. We smelled like apples for a week, and our hairs, we looked like Rosanna Dana. But hey, it made a good story. We had perms that were huge. Yeah, it was fun, and yes, they were dangerous chemicals. That's right.
Back to the voting. Carrie and I voted the same poll. She would know all the people.
She'll be back in a minute. She just had the assistant.
The last 2 times I voted, there had been a huge amount of pressure. I mean, I want a paper ballot. You sure you don't want to go electronic? It's so much easier. It's less work for us, it's faster, blah, blah, blah. No, I want a paper ballot. The last time there was one position in the school board, whatever, okay, I'll go electronic. And listening to, it irritates me, and I want to call these people on the carpet about it. Is that something that they should be doing?
I don't know.
People, paper, plastic paper.
Yeah, I think, again, it's uniform. It needs to be uniform, because then there's no confusion. Because you can move from Custer County to Twin Falls, and you want to be used to it. In fact, there were some wonky things going on in Twin Falls as well. They're not all the same, and that's what's alarming to me. And just since I've decided to run for this position, my eyes are wide open. But it's all, so it's black and white what needs to happen to fix it. I mean, there's no doubt. I don't even have any fear of this job at all. I mean, a superintendent of public instruction, yeah, it's such a mess, I wouldn't even want to tackle it. I mean, there's no way you can fix it, or it's a mess. But as far as this is fixable, and it is going to be fixed to where people have confidence in the system. Because right now, every story I hear is just alarming to me. Because what's the press been saying? We don't have an issue here in Idaho. But all these little issues make it much larger, more impactful. And that's what we have to be wary of. Yes.
So,
running some, like you said, absentee ballots through the machines.
Just any ballot. I mean, just practice ballots, practice ballots.
So, do they not do a calibration check on these?
They're supposed to.
Because, I mean, normally when you operate any kind of measurement machine, you'll run a known standard to verify it's reading that. You'll do your test, and then you will run another known standard to make sure nothing happened to that machine between when you did the first standard and the second standard. So you could have some known, you already know what the result should be of these ballots.
Right.
Verify that comes out, and then do that again at the end of the actual count. They don't do that?
I don't know. I don't know. I can't, it's very difficult right now for them to answer any of my questions.
Right? You do that with your flu, right? You test it before you use it, verify another. So, I mean, that's just a normal way to operate machines. So hopefully they can implement something like that as a policy.
I agree with you. I think there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. Hey, everybody, when you go out, I've got some calendars over there with my address on it. Those are my representative ones. Please take one, and you can always reach out to me no matter what, because I don't mind representing everybody. Especially last year. It doesn't bother me at all. Yes?
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you for coming.
Is that at the polls is not where you have the most concern, unless you know for sure that you have a ton of mail-in ballots or paper ballots that you need to verify. So every election office is going to have to verify any write-in ballots. They should be doing that because basically they are in control of the area that is their district. If that is not, even if that's happening, the problem that we saw in the last election had to do with the transfer of those ballots to the main and that is an open area. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I've seen those ballot machines, and they have all sorts of ports in there. And then they bring those ports in to be plugged into the machine that actually goes to another area, which is in the election office. The question is, how do we make sure that that connection is secure? How do we know that our votes from our capital, where they have all the information, is being tabulated correctly across the United States? We don't have right now, currently, anything to validate that or to confirm that. And that is a very big concern that we should all be concerned about, is that, yeah, we can do paper ballots. The tabulation for each and every district that's being calculated, how do we know that it's not corrupted at someplace over an internet line or whatever?
You do what's called a channel check, and you verify the results at the polling place, and then you transfer your data, and then you verify that what you received is the same as what left. We do at the site. We deal with classified information all the time, where we have to verify that it's not intercepted and that it can't be monitored outside. So I'm just saying, there's technology and methods already developed for doing that sort of thing.
But it doesn't.
We just need to get them to people like her so they can be implemented on here. But there's chain of custody. You can put ballots in a box and put security seal on that will identify if it has been tampered with or not. Right? There's ways of doing this, and you can do the same thing with the data. You know what you sent, then you can verify it against what they received, and then you know that nothing changed in between, right? So there's ways of doing this stuff. We just need to get the people who benefit from any wonky business to go along with us fixing these things.
I think that, the obvious thing is, and it's like Dave was just saying, we got to get the right people in. We got to start doing the right thing. We all have concerns, and it boils down to we need to pay attention. We need to get the right people in to do the right things. There are solutions that we can do, and we just have to, as individuals, work on our representatives and our elected officials to be able to make sure that they do what we want. and that's a key thing there. There are, and you just heard a little bit of it right here, there are solutions. It takes a little bit of work, but a little bit of work never hurt anybody. It really didn't. And so, and if it, in my opinion, and I'm not going to take, this is Dorothy, but it's what we need to do. So, and again, it's almost 9:30.
She's off the plane, I think, by now.
And she has her sister coming in and all that. So I just ask you, why don't you just give a few final remarks, and then we'll close it up. But you can have time to talk to people and whatnot, and a little bit into
Carrie will bring her back, so Carrie will bring her here. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say, I remember one of my opponents, someone said they'll do a fine job. And I said, I'll do a great job. I promise you I will. I would. I will do a great job. I know what, I've got energy. I mean, I've been taking vitamins for 18 months. I know I've got a lot of energy, and I haven't been sick, so that's all good. But no, in all seriousness, I do see a path. It's as clear as day to me what I need to do. And if people are upset about what's happening at the polls, we just need to fix it. But people need to tell me what issues, are alarming them, so we can address the hot button ones first, because it's going to take a little bit of time. But we have had an election integrity committee, and they did meet in the Lincoln Auditorium. I attended those meetings. I've watched the Mike Lindell stuff. These things have happened. And right now, I think Idaho is pretty safe from some serious fraud issues, but incrementally, as things keep moving into this state, it's just going to get worse. So we just have to nip it in the bud. And that's what I see doing. Anyway, I would appreciate your vote. This is a statewide race. And of course, funding is always great, and I hate asking for money, but I will ask for money. So I do have envelopes over there. I do have my palm card out there. I do have signs that are getting ready to be made. Hopefully, there's no trekking boycott if the vax is being enforced. Right now, it looks like the courts are kind of working on our side on that. But if it does happen, then we'll have trouble with signs, just like we do on electronics and pieces for our cars and everything else that we need that's been delayed. So anyway, but things are moving, and just like Janice and just like Priscilla, we appreciate each other's skills. I definitely, I've worked very closely with Priscilla and with Janice because we did the Capital Clarity together. They hated it. The leadership hated the fact that the people were able to have transparency and see what bills were coming up and how they can help influence any changes or amendments or even killing some or fully supporting them. So we're hopefully going to do Capital Clarity. I don't know how we're all going to do it with us all running statewide races while we're up in Boise, but that's why I'm going out now. So my sister's actually going to be traveling with me to North Idaho. We'll be up there for about a week and a half, working our way down to Kamei and Lewiston and Grangeville down to McCall. In McCall, they have the big rock slide. If you don't know, 55 is closed with that avalanche, so I've got to get down into McCall and Donnelly and then come back out and go down 95. And I may not see those people ever again after that. I got to say them one more time. But anyway, I mean, seriously, it's a bad deal. I think it might be closed for a month or so. So then I'll have all of North Idaho covered, North Central Idaho covered. I've been down here a lot thanks to Doug. I mean, I really do appreciate this organization. It is phenomenal that what you guys are doing. And up to Southeast Idaho, I've covered pretty well, and Mini-Cassia area, in my area. So I'm going to have to hit Boise, and I'm going to hit it hard. So every day after I get done working in the legislature, I will be out meeting people somewhere. That's my promise to you. I won't stop until May. Anyway, so thank you very much for coming out. I've enjoyed it.
I appreciate everybody coming and supporting us. These dinners and everything. It's really fun. It gives us time to sit down and talk and visit and get to know each other. We're going to have another one in a month. I do not know who the speaker will be, but we'll find somebody dynamic and all that. So I appreciate your support there. And again, the key thing is pay attention to who you're going to elect. Who your representatives are. We're in a. And I keep preaching this, but we're in a time of need, and pay attention to what we're doing. Pay attention to who you're going to elect, because if we don't make some changes, we're going to lose things. So again, with that, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it, and see most of you next Tuesday. Thank you. Tuesday, we actually have Steve Bradshaw, who is a candidate for governor, coming too. And so that's one thing about our governor, or the gubernatorial race, is there's so many of them that there's a real concern about splitting tickets and things like this. And so we just need to pay attention to who's running. Thank you again. Have a good evening. Thank you. Bye.